The bell above the diner door rang sharply, slicing through the quiet hum of mid-morning chatter, and every head turned at once. Sunlight poured through the wide glass windows, catching the chrome edges of the counter and the red vinyl stools. But the warmth of the day vanished the moment the bikers stepped inside. At their center walked a tall, broad-shouldered man with graying black hair tied back in a low knot, his leather vest heavy with patches and stories. His name was Rourke Maddox, and the town of Briar Glen had learned to lower its voice when he passed. Behind the counter stood a young waitress named Marisol Vega, barely 23, her brown hair twisted into a tight bun at the back of her head. She held a glass coffee pot in trembling hands. On her cheekbone, just beneath her left eye, was a fading bruise, the color of storm clouds. A thin red mark traced along her jawline. She had tried to cover it with makeup, but in the bright honesty of daylight it was impossible to hide. Rourke noticed. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply noticed. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, and stories. Stories like this remind us that even in the most unexpected places, humanity can rise. Briar Glen was the kind of town where rumors traveled faster than the freight train that passed every afternoon. The Iron Serpent's motorcycle club had rolled through a few months earlier, and though they never caused open trouble, their presence made shop owners uneasy. They wore heavy boots, rode thunderous machines, and carried reputations that preceded them. Parents tugged children closer when engines roared down Main Street. Marisol had grown used to serving them coffee every Tuesday morning. She moved carefully around their table, polite and quiet. The men rarely caused problems inside the diner, but their sheer presence unsettled the other customers. Rourke always sat at the end of the counter, back straight, eyes observant. He noticed details most people missed, the way someone's hands shook when pouring cream, the way laughter faltered when fear crept in. That morning, when Marisol leaned forward to refill his mug, her sleeve slipped just enough to reveal a deep purple bruise wrapping around her wrist like a cruel bracelet. Rourke's jaw tightened. Marisol quickly tugged her sleeve down and forced a thin smile. She had mastered that smile over the past year. It was the smile that said everything was fine. It was the smile that begged people not to ask questions. She lived on the outskirts of town in a small rented house with peeling white paint and a sagging porch. After her father passed away from a long illness, she had been left alone with mounting bills. That was when Travis Hale entered her life. Charming at first, generous with compliments, promising protection and stability. Over time, his charm curdled into control. Control became anger. Anger became violence. But Briar Glen did not see that part. They saw Travis volunteering at the hardware store and shaking hands at community events. They saw Marisol's polite silence and assumed she was shy. Rourke did not assume. He finished his coffee without another word and signaled to one of his men, a heavyset biker named Coulter Vance. The rest of the club sensed the shift in their leader's posture. Something had caught his attention. When Marisol returned to wipe the counter, she flinched slightly as Rourke's deep voice finally broke the quiet. He did not accuse, he did not threaten, he simply asked if she was safe. The question alone nearly broke her. The lie trembled in the air between them. Outside, the sunlight shimmered across polished chrome motorcycles lined along the curb. Inside, tension tightened like a drawn wire. Other customers pretended not to watch. Rourke reached into his vest and placed a folded business card on the counter. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was a phone number and a single sentence written on the back in neat, deliberate handwriting. No one deserves to be hurt. Marisol stared at it long after he and the Iron Serpents left. Days passed. The bruises deepened before fading again. Travis grew more suspicious, more volatile. He hated when Marisol worked late shifts. He accused her of things that never happened. One afternoon, in a burst of rage over nothing more than a burnt dinner, he shoved her hard enough that she spucked the kitchen cabinet. That night, with trembling fingers, she pulled the business card from her apron pocket. Pride and fear are powerful silencers. But pain is louder. When Rourke answered, he did not ask for explanations. He told her where to meet him the next morning, in broad daylight, at the diner, when the town could see everything. The next day dawned bright and cloudless. The air smelled of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Marisol arrived early, her nerves jangling with every passing car. She wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. Then the sound came, the low synchronized rumble of engines rolling into town. The iron serpents didn't storm the diner. They parked neatly along the curb, engines cutting off one by one. They entered calmly, filling booths and stools, not as a threat, but as witnesses. Rourke stood at the counter, his presence solid as stone. Within an hour, Travis arrived. Someone had told him about the bikes. His face was flushed with anger, his eyes sharp with suspicion. He pushed through the door and marched toward Marisol. But he didn't get far. Rourke stepped between them, not with violence, not with raised fists, but with quiet authority. The diner fell silent, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fans. Sunlight streamed across the tiled floor, illuminating every detail for anyone who cared to look. Rourke spoke in a low, steady tone that carried through the room. He said that Marisol was not alone. He said that hurting someone smaller did not make a man strong. He said the whole town could see the truth now. Travis laughed at first, dismissing it as intimidation. But when he turned, he saw not just bikers watching him. He saw Mrs. Calloway from the flower shop, standing with arms crossed. He saw the mechanic from across the street, shaking his head. He saw faces he had smiled at for years, now looking at him differently. The shock was not in raised fists or shattered glass. The shock was in unity. Rourke had done something no one expected. Instead of bringing fear, he brought witnesses. Instead of starting a fight, he exposed one. He had quietly spread word through town the night before, telling shop owners and regular customers that something important would happen at the diner. He didn't reveal details, he simply asked them to show up. And they did. In the full glare of morning light, Travis's bluster dissolved. Without secrecy, his power evaporated. Abuse thrives in silence, it shrivels in exposure. When the local sheriff's cruiser pulled up, called not by the bikers, but by Marisol herself, the entire diner remained still. She had found her voice. Her hands shook as she spoke, but she spoke clearly. The bruises were no longer hidden. The sheriff listened carefully. The town listened too. Travis was escorted out, not in dramatic chaos but in quiet defeat. Marisol felt her knees weaken once the door closed behind him. For the first time in months, she could breathe fully. Tears slipped down her face, not from fear this time, but from release. Rourke did not linger for praise. He simply nodded once, as if to say the choice had always been hers. The iron serpents finished their coffee and filed out into the sun. Engines roared to life again, but the sound no longer carried menace. It carried something closer to protection. News traveled fast. By afternoon, Briar Glen was buzzing. The biker gang leader who people feared had stood up for a waitress. He had not thrown a punch. He had not shattered a window. He had revealed the truth and rallied a town. In the weeks that followed, Marisol moved into a small apartment above the bakery. Neighbors checked in on her. The diner owner offered flexible shifts. The bruise on her cheek faded to yellow, then disappeared completely. But the deeper healing took longer. She attended counseling sessions at the community center. She began smiling without forcing it. She laughed again, soft at first, then freely. One bright Tuesday morning, months later, the iron serpents returned. The bell above the diner door rang, but this time the tension was gone. Rourke took his usual seat at the counter. Marisol poured his coffee with steady hands. There were no bruises to hide, only strength. The town had changed too. People greeted the bikers with cautious respect, rather than fear. They had learned that appearances can deceive, and that sometimes the roughest exterior hides a code stronger than steel. Rourke finished his coffee and left a generous tip, but more importantly, he left something invisible. A reminder that courage can be contagious. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the most unexpected heroes can stand for what's right, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps stories like Marisol's reach others who may need hope today. Because sometimes, in the brightest light of day, when a whole town is watching, one act of steady courage can break the silence that fear built. And when silence breaks, healing begins.